mistakes do happen, and it's all about how you recover from them and taking ownership of the mistake itself and improving on that and trying not to keep making the same mistake.
So learning from your mistakes.
That and you take ownership of it. Like you're not pushing blame on the lead or the environmental aspects of it. Like, okay, you know what? That's on me. I'll fix it from there, and then you just move forward from there.
I'm glad that transitioned back into DCS. I thought we were talking about the first like 36 years of my life for a second there. Was vaguely worried.
No, he brings up a good point though, like that rolling with the punches aspect too, of like, you're gonna get up and you're in the middle of, maybe doing something complicated and oops, we put in a waypoint wrong, or whatever it is. It's just how you then deal with it in the moment of, okay, here's our situation. What tools do we have to fix it? And then move on. And, at the end of the day, how well did we do after that mistake, really?
So don't let your mistakes interrupt your decision cycle and your focus.
Exactly. Yeah, because otherwise you're going to lose. Like that helmet fire is going to start real quick if you start focusing on little mistakes. Like we've all done it. You make one mistake, you start focusing on it, and the next thing you know, because everything's happening so dang fast, there's 2 mistakes, now 3, and then it just starts compounding.
Yeah, you just get farther and farther and farther behind the jet.
Spend a lot of dollars trying to recover from a mistake if you keep hampering on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the point is, not to, interrupt your hit me thing, but please don't hit me in a mission. But if you don't hit me, if you don't shoot me down, if you don't blow up the good guys, if you don't crash into another flight, there's a lot of mistakes we can recover from. I've seen very few mistakes that were detrimental to the entire mission, and we're going to kill everyone's evening. What is detrimental is if you start going down that path, and it's easy. I competed in sports. I drove race cars. I've ridden bicycles and raced, other people in a road bike. I've done a lot of different competitive things. And there was a growth point for me in doing those things where I just had to get in my mind the mentality that all I can do is focus on what I'm doing, apply the skills the best I have, and stay in the moment. Because when I got out of the moment, when I started making mistakes, I started going backwards, and then my mentality was going the wrong way, and it escalated into more problems. And, I would just end up in this negative loop that didn't help anything. And I found that the more I stayed calm, the more I focused on that, the more I closed in on the details. Like around here, for instance, when I fly by the carrier in case 1 in the 2,000 feet in low holding, there are specific things I do. On the 5-mile scale, I have the course line on BRC, and I put my left wingtip at the 5-mile scale on that line. Why? So that when I roll out and try to get to the commence point, I'm starting from the same point every time. Now there could be different crosswinds or whatever, but I'm using a technique to set myself up for the next thing. And I have all these little skills I've built. So I try to focus on those things and focus on the task at hand and the skills I need. And I'll beat myself up and confess my sins in a debrief.
Exactly.
So
sometimes you gotta I'd say another thing about being a wing and a relatively new one at that is like, to Shaker's point about you want to fix the mistakes, and sometimes the shortest route to fixing the mistake is asking for help, right? And like flying with one actual, getting to know these guys, I've kind of come to the conclusion of like, if they tell me to do something or I realize I've made some mistake, like if I don't think I can figure that out myself in the space of the next 15 seconds, then it's better to just ask, because I can go to Cali or Grindel with a small mistake, or I can go to Cali and Grindel with a dumpster fire because I let it get out of hand before I ask somebody about it.
You're stealing all of my wingman guides, stop it. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're going to get all right. Anything else you guys want to add before we go into what my personal thoughts were ahead of time?
No, I don't want to steal it.
You can steal all you want. No, it's good. I actually prefer you steal it. I'm just going to give you some crap.
Nothing for me.
Yeah, I don't want to thunderstrike anything. So,
all right, let's go into my first thought I had individually. So, as I discussed, an athletic or mental reset, right? Actually, I'm going to turn off this overlay a second because it's getting in the way. There we go. So an athletic or a mental reset, forgive yourself for mistakes. So, you can see an athlete get upset or mad or have an issue, and maybe they throw their helmet or something. But by the time the next play comes, they've forgiven themselves. They're moving on because they know they can't get in that negative loop, or at least hopefully they've learned that level if they're on a professional level. Any extra thoughts on that from you guys?
that's how I was coached as a little kid. There was no last play.
Right. Forget it.
It doesn't matter. Like, who cares? Go out, do your job.
Yeah.
So same thing with this. You make these mistakes, whatever it is, correct as quick as you can, and don't. I loved your automotive thing because I do a lot of like sim racing. It's the same thing though. It's if you hit a turn and it's just crap, I could sit there and spend the next 4 turns thinking about how, turn 8 was just total shit and I should, really focus on that. Or I could just be in the moment and focus on turns 9, 10, 11, 12, because otherwise the rest of my turns are going to start going to crap too. Like, you have to stay in that moment. Otherwise, yeah, like you're saying too with the concentration dollars, your brain can only do so much in a night. And if you're going to devote 20% of your brain to thinking about that one moment 15 minutes ago when you made a mistake, what good is it going to do you in an hour?
You got to control the narrative. Your mind will drive you crazy with stupid, random despair. Your mind hates you, right? That's what's very apparent, right? I mean, I don't know if your mind hates you as much as mine hates me, apparently, but you got to flip the script on that narrative and think positive. Hey, I'm doing a good job. Or, I even got the point of, I'm just going to follow this guy in a car. I can't figure out what he's doing. I'm going to study him. I'm going to follow his line and I'm going to learn something and make this into a positive, even if I can't pass him or beat him, right? You got to control the narrative.
No, totally. Like, your brain is, like you said, your worst enemy in this kind of stuff. I tell people in the early stages of training, like, 50% of this game is mental. Like, you've already psyched yourself up to a point of how much you need to learn and all this stuff, that mentally you got to get over that hump now and get your confidence back, because otherwise you won't go anywhere.
Yeah, and Dog in here is mentioning that, the little voices within, they it's so tough, man. You got to let them go, like he's saying, and it's difficult. And, even Brendan here is talking about Shaker, trying to make him understand that for the first time and still struggling. I mean, there are nights where I get upset with myself and, I'm not saying I have this mastered. It's something you have to constantly work on. But I think the important thing is like I have here in this next thing, don't dwell on the mistakes, focus on the next task. So forget it. Mm-hmm. What's the next task I've got to do in this mission, in this flight, or really anything that you're doing, right? Focus on the next thing you have to do. Any other thoughts on that before we move on to the next one?
Nope. That's solid DCS and life advice.
Well, this is a combination of where this comes from. So the last one on this is attitude. Your attitude is everything, right? If you can control how you feel about it, if you can forgive yourself and move on, you can have a positive attitude. And that carries on to, when I was racing, one of my teammates was just super negative on certain things. And I had to pull him aside one day. I'm like, look, dude, you need to park that crap and you need to just tell me something positive in my ear. In fact, small sim racing story. I was racing at a very high level with a sim race. We were doing some off stuff on the dirt in a different series. And I actually had a professional NASCAR driver who's actually from the local area, but I only met him online, funny enough. He was doing spotting for me. So he was telling me what was going on. And when I was clear and, telling me I'm gaining on the car in front of me and I'm leaving the car I had just passed. And I had never experienced that before, where someone was like actively motivating me and trying to pump me up. And I was so motivated. By the time we were done with that little 20-lap hot race, I was probably in the best mental state I could be in, and he put me there, and we talked about it afterward. He says, yep, that's what they do on the radio. They got to get everything out of you. They're going to pump you up. No matter what happens, they're going to say something positive. So I really can't stress enough that attitude is absolutely everything.
Totally. I think for both like wing, or for the lead and wing, like both need to stay positive with each other, because like it's easy when both guys or one guy's having a bad night, making a bunch of mistakes. Other guy can start getting frustrated, whatever the case may be. But just like you're saying, if you can both stay in that like positive mental space, stay on that task at hand, don't be sitting there worrying about the dumb crap you did, 5 minutes ago, you can always salvage a flight. Like worst case, as long as you both go back and land together, you're good.
The funniest thing is, I've had flights where I've made tons of mistakes. My wingman had no idea. They didn't know.
I did that one night. I think it was Shaker here, actually. We all, maybe Rudy was there. There was a few of us one night. We all went in as a four ship back to the boat. And I hadn't flown in a few days. And I was just kind of kicking the rust off my boots and everything. And I was sitting there being overly critical of myself. I'm sitting like, oh, I was this, I was this, I was that. And I think the Shaker was just like, dude, I haven't noticed a single thing, because I've just been looking at that sidewinder on the side of your jet this entire time. So we could be 500 feet off from where we're supposed to be. And I have no clue.
Yeah.
Awesome. Talking about positivity, Rudy, Fett, flying with both you guys, like not having the positivity is one thing that I always try to put into everyone I'm flying with. Student, not student, doesn't matter. Like, we're good. Don't worry. Like, we're good. Like, we'll do whatever we got to do to make sure that whatever direction we're flying, we'll get there. But if there's a mistake, we'll correct it. No big deal. And like, Fett was like, well, you're better off the wing than I am. And I'm like, dude, you're good. Don't worry about it. Like you're not giving yourself enough credit. And like me looking from the outside perspective at him, like he's so hard on himself where it looks perfect, but we're critical, and that it kind of takes our attitude in the dumps a little bit. And it's just, it's okay to be critical of yourself, but at the same time, like, give yourself some slack at the same time.
So, how some things are a gift and a curse at the same time?
Hey, yes.
So that self-critical self-doubt in your mind, I learned, turn that into a little bit of self-evaluation, but don't let it beat you up, right? Don't let it tear you down. Use that as the information you need to think about and the input from other people to balance it out so that you don't drive yourself absolutely crazy. Because I went down some pretty negative, hard paths, and it took me a minute to get there. But once I did, I realized it and everything got easier. I try to stay in that mindset.
It's a challenge. I mean, that's why kind of sports psychologists people exist, right? It can be a challenge to do this sort of thing. I have an author that I like that often says that to a first approximation, wisdom is nothing more than the capacity to take your own good advice. But it's hard to do, right? Like we give good advice to our friends, and then we get in our own head about a situation that's exactly the same thing, and we're beating ourselves up about it.
Yeah,
that doesn't make sense.
No, I mean I get it. You just what's that song? Was it the Eagles that had that song? Don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy.